Hey everyone, Richard Blais here on behalf of Morton Sea Salt, one of my favorite recipes of all time. It's a standing rib roast, otherwise known as prime rib. I'm going to dry age it, but the dry aging process, which usually takes 30 to 60 days, is only going to take overnight because I'm gonna teach you a hack to dry age your prime rib roast. So I'm gonna start by making the seasoning mixture that I'm gonna rub on my standing prime rib roast. I'm gonna start with some Morton Coarse Sea Salt, and that's gonna be the base of our seasoning here. I'm gonna add a little bit of Worcestershire powder. Again, we're looking for all of those flavors that are gonna evoke like this dry-aged, funky in a good way, dry-aged meat. And then I'm gonna add some blue cheese. Let it come down to room temperature. That's gonna be really important for this recipe. Sort of break it up into little pieces. And then I'm gonna mash this blue cheese, the Worcestershire powder, and the Morton Coarse Sea Salt, and I'm gonna rub it all over my standing prime rib roast. I'm gonna wrap that up, and I'm gonna let it sit in the fridge overnight. Add a little bit more salt there, it'll be easier to mash. A little bit more of the Worcestershire powder. All right, and I'm just gonna get in there and mash it all up and create this paste that I'm gonna rub on the roast. All right, so here we go, look at this. It's kind of like a dough. This is also therapeutic, you know? It feels really good. All right, there we go. Now we have this paste, basically, of blue cheese, Morton Coarse Sea Salt, and Worcestershire powder. And we are going to rub this all over and just sort of cover our rib roast. And now I'm going to wrap this up and let it sit in the fridge overnight. Okay, so we have our standing prime rib roast that's been in the fridge overnight. Now I'm gonna need my final seasoning mix. So my final seasoning mix is gonna be right here. Some powdered mustard, a little bit of powdered garlic, some brown sugar, some onion powder, a little bit of black pepper, and of course, a little bit of this Morton Coarse Sea Salt that we're gonna rub this down before we pop it in the oven. Okay, so I have my spice mix made, and I'm going to bring over our standing rib roast that's been marinating overnight. It's just this funky blue cheese aroma. It smells like dry-aged beef. This is kind of an amazing hack. And what I'm gonna do now is remove the blue cheese paste that's on the rib roast. And you're gonna see that the meat underneath looks like it's dry-aged meat. If you like blue cheese and you wanna make a sauce out of this and not throw it away, I'm just gonna pop it over here into a pan, a little bit of cream or milk, and you can make a nice little blue cheese fondue or a blue cheese sauce for your steak. All right, and now we're gonna take our rib roast and pop it into the pan. And now it is time to put that seasoning, a nice layer of that, and then we're gonna take our spice rub and put it on prime rib right here. All right, so there we go. We have our prime rib roast that we aged overnight in blue cheese, Worcestershire powder, and Morton Coarse Sea Salt. We pulled that out the next day. We removed that blue cheese. We seasoned this with mustard and garlic and onion and more coarse sea salt. And now this roast is gonna head into the oven, 300, 325 for a couple of hours. All right, so we have our roast that's out of the oven. It's been cooked for 4 hours. Now we want that roast to rest. We want it to be nice and juicy. While that's resting, we're gonna start the next part of our meal. We're gonna take these potatoes, we're gonna add them to our pan. We're gonna cover our potatoes, a little bit of cold water. So we have our potatoes just covered with water, and then we're gonna add about a cup's worth of Morton fine sea salt to this. We're using fine sea salt, because we want the salt to adhere to the potatoes. If we were using the coarse grind, it wouldn't really adhere. It looks like a lot of salt, but what's gonna happen is these potatoes are gonna cook in the water. We're gonna evaporate all of the water, and what we're gonna be left with are these little tiny potatoes that are just dusted with all of this great, amazing sea salt. While the potatoes are cooking, I'm gonna turn my attention to our beef that has now been rested for 15 or 20 minutes or so, right? So you want it to sit again so the juices don't run all over the place. Now it's time to slice our prime rib. Moment of truth. Oh my God, look at that. It's pink and delicious, a perfect medium, which means perfect, by the way. This is genuine excitement right now. Look at this, perfectly cooked. Over here you can see our potatoes. All of the water has dried up. All right, so there you go. You see our sea salted potatoes. The sea salt, the fine sea salt just adhering to the potatoes. Okay, so finishing up with a little bit of that coarse sea salt for some texture. And there you go. We have our dry aged prime rib roast with our sea salted potatoes, and that's dinner for me.